There is a little group that I join every now and then. They're the Christian, and the last time I was talking more about the difference of the Western and Eastern, like Buddhist and Christianity. That may have triggered, but this is the story. I don't think I said it this way, but about Nirvana or heaven. Is that what you call? When you pass away, you go to heaven? I think so. In Buddhism, Nirvana is the term, and I want to say my experience of it. As much as Saichi is so straightforward, Myokonin, carving sandals to make living, lived maybe 150 years ago. He said something like, I go to the Pureland, I'm back to this world. I go to Pureland and come back. And Pureland is Nirvana. And that's the same kind of difficulties in Shin Buddhism, that many of them want to have Nirvana or heaven after death. But this is the case of finding Nirvana while you are alive. When I mentioned about the Daisetz talking about dead man Daisetz, or the same with Saichi, talking about the funeral. I have done my funeral already, or some such thing. So what it indicates, this is a word that is kind of tricky, without the experience of it. It may not mean anything. But the death in that instance is he's alive physically, but the dead self identity, no self, or ego, no ego. And that's unbelievable in a common sense, and also unbelievable to say no ego and go to Nirvana in this life. For whatever reason, I'm with that idea. So I'm going to talk about it. So I'm not to be called as blasphemy, why the guy who says something weird and maybe taken as much. But let me explain anyway. This is very subjective experience, and so you don't have to believe it. But I may have mentioned this before, that sense of a nirvanic state is a blissful state. And in that state, there's no mind, no self. So samadhi is there or almost there. Depends on the level of samadhi. When you say, or I say, no mind, no self, theoretically, for a few seconds, we may have such a state. But it's just stopping. But the engine of the mind is still functioning in a way in the back, so to speak. But when you have this joriki, the constant power, joriki, Riki is power, a steady power. If you develop the samadhi in the joriki, steady power, it is as if you connect to the root of who you are. And that's an odd expression, but it's not something you can find in the mind. The root is not in there. Root is in the heart, so to speak, or I call it the laws of universe that made us to be alive. And I often say it's a miracle that we exist out of the dust of the universe. Actually, that we didn't go to that discussion with this Christian group. They're asking me something, but this is mainly for Christian. We are talking about the New Testament, John, and we spend time on that. But maybe I may talk a little bit. I was just saying that the Christianity is after the division, after the mind, after the beginning is the word. That's the kind of a notion that is commonly, believed. And the Buddhist way is before that. So no words, that's why no thinking, right? The samadhi is no thinking, no word, no logic. State of being. That's the core state, root state, that term I often use. So back to this Saichi, and he can go in and out, but he also have this horn indicating he has a delusionally thought popping up. He's a human, so that he can be in samadhi or in the nirvanic sense and the Pureland, and he comes in and out, and I feel the same. Blasphemy, yeah, maybe that's the word. It's not in the terminology of the Christian, but maybe call it the Buddhist way or some other way, because each person can create their own language or thought pieces and talk about it. So that's one of the reasons why I don't want to talk about it. But now it's coming to the point that maybe I can talk, because I start to talk about Nama Amida Butsu. And what is Nama Amida Butsu? You throw your ego away and have the Amida to take over. May not be the right expression that people may use, but that's the way I feel. That when you're connected at the root level and the samadhi, there's no mind functioning, and as I said, the wisdom and compassion is coming from there. And to go into the mind to be able to express. So that's one story. So the other story, again, is related to the death of ego, funeral. And like I said, Saichi goes back to this world, so he's got his self too. So in and out, no self, self, no self, self. But he called it that he has done the funeral for the self. So he's much further in that end of the nirvanic sense or Pureland, and there he writes every day. Maybe I talk YouTube every day. He writes poems every day, and he doesn't show others, only to the priest in the Shin Buddhism living in the same town, which is a remote town in Japan. Shimane, I think. In my case, I talk out loud. Not too loud, but in a delicate way, so that I don't stir up so much. But I'm getting to the point that, we can talk about it. So I want to talk about my sense of nirvanic sense of what it is. So this is probably easiest way. Well, I may have mentioned already, when we meditate, you can feel the sensation, inner body sensation, like vibration, tingling sense. And when you focus in breathing, sensation is there, and you get into the zone, so to speak. And when nothing is, and even the breathing almost stops, and I mentioned that to you. I was scared that breathing stopped because you are so peaceful, and I thought I may die. You wouldn't, I'm sure about it, but at the time, that was the beginning part, the first time I went to vipassana, and I get into the stage, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, I may die if I don't breathe. So you get that zone, peaceful space, and then I had this bhanga, like satori, and what it happened then is just the willing of the life energy coming out, taking over. And this whole thing was shaking, and I didn't know what happened. Also, I remember nighttime, I was to sleep, and I could feel that energy still kind of like I don't know how to explain this. There's someone other than me living in here and just running around. That was the sense. And when I look at it and how it's going to run, I want to see how the running goes this way, that way, and it happened like that. So the observation of what's going on, and then there's no bottleneck, the barrier is gone, transparency, and the nirvanic sense of bliss is there. So that's the night. And then after that event, it just happens in a few seconds or less than a minute that if I pay attention to certain part of the body, it responds as if there's nothing in between. So it's kind of like a oneness of the experience and then it's not just one here, there, but whole body can. So the sensation there is nirvanic and blissful, and I can relate to, perhaps you may have it too, when you watch a wonderful movie and something so impressive and you feel like the whole body is shaking or the blissful and feel it in your heart and you don't know what to do. So it's kind of like that. I cannot tell what or how Saichi or Daisetz or whoever expressed. And there are some stories here and there, and also the poems in the Sufi area too. So when you notice, and also Meister Eckhart, in Christianity too, and that expression is kind of out of the world, but still like a esoteric, I guess is the word, that there's some nuance that is coming out when it is explained. So the example of watching a movie with a sunset or some beautiful scenery and you go, and your mind stops and you feel empty. Maybe you don't think that is empty, but it's kind of like a nothingness or the transparency. See, if I can try it, it just comes. And you can stop it when you use your mind and just to do the routine things. But if you go inside of you, like I mentioned in the meditation, but also Namo Amidabutsu, is the anchoring, triggering mechanism, some kind of a nembutsu, which is like a chanting, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, or without saying it, just there was the Zen koan. The guy, when he was asked for something, he just go like that. Stop your mind. Be aware. And that's the moment. And also the moment of satori is often explained in this way, that when someone was walking and hit the stone, and stone jumped and hit the bamboo and made a noise, and that's when this guy was enlightened. Kyo, I forgot the name. And then the Ikkyu's case was nighttime, he was meditating. All of a sudden, there's a crow made a noise, and then he woke up. Various stories like that. So something triggers to get to that mind barrier to be broken, and then heart or body is functioning, but that function become so strong or important because that is why you are alive. And that, watching the sunset or the movie, you are resonating with that experience. In that space, time, nothing, just, and then you feel it, vibration or the shivering sense or, tingling thing, or it may go around. So that's the state that if I want, I can go in and out too, like in Saichi. So you can say maybe this is not it, or this is it, or it doesn't matter. You cannot prove it unless you have some measurement, and maybe there's a way to prove it, alpha, beta, and some other stuff. But it's not that important. It's more of a state of being, which I say the core of our being is there. That's why the story of go back to the Garden of Eden. Be like a deer, or the bird, or the tree. It sounds weird, but it's nature's way. To realize that nature's way is the master. And all this stuff is kind of like added on. But again, that's the breakthrough that we may have. Like a hierarchy of needs, Maslow, from the basic need and so forth. There's the ego needs, perhaps, and then the society's need, and the highest is the self-realization. And I'm upset with some issue about the AI, that they're not getting, the basic stuff yet. I shouldn't be upset, but, they make the same mistake over and over. And many people say that the artificial super intelligence is 2 years, 5 years, whatever. But the way it's going on is kind of missing the boat at the much basic level that I may have mentioned that I want to write a letter to Jeffrey Hinton about what I see here. That's another story. The important story is our view of how we may feel peaceful, and the notion in Buddhist way or many other religion, Taoism and Sufism, and Christianity too, certain people. It's not the hierarchical discussion of yes and no and right and wrong. It's more of a physiological or, experiential wisdom, the level that is to be had. And the mushin, no mind, is critical. No self, muga, is also critical. And that's why I'm pointing that is the source of who we are, and we get close and be accustomed to it, to realize the function of that helping us to be out of the delusionary thought, and the AI's delusionary thought, and everyone. And this world is shifting in such a manner into the high-tech and the wealth gap and all those things happening. Whereas this fundamental issue, we may be missing a boat. If we open up, listen. But we can say that, just finishing with few more lines. When you're born under the influence of certain person with certain habit, and you're learning at your early age, that becomes the routine, software functioning. Click and it runs. And then to change takes time. So that's the basic difficulties, the hurdles that as humans, I'm hoping that we may do something about it. Also possibly with the help of AI. But this story is about the satori or the bliss and the nirvana, and whether we can have it in our life or after. I thought I may just throw in some ideas, not to convince anyone, just to ideas sharing.